Just a 2-second introduction to myself, rather. I sold real estate for 12 years in Minneapolis, just outside of Minneapolis. I started at age 23. I really didn't have a clue what I was doing. Wanted to be an entrepreneur, decided I wanted to be my own business owner. I didn't want to work in corporate America after going to a 4-year college with $30,000 of debt, by the way. My parents thought I lost my marbles, but it all worked out. So thankfully it did. I literally just, there was something in me that just told me, you know, you have an opportunity to do something bigger than just be sitting in a desk in a corporation that you have to work super hard to have limited opportunities of wealth. And so I picked real estate. At that time, I actually didn't even own a home yet. I did shortly after that buy a townhome. And the rest is history. I built my career on open houses. I had no budget. I had no sphere of influence in the Twin Cities. I came from a small town in Minnesota, so I didn't have anybody that I knew there. And all the people that had graduated college with me were in debt and just had a first job, so they weren't buying houses. And so I literally just needed to figure out how I was going to sell real estate, meet people, and not spend a lot of money. And so literally I did 4 open houses a weekend for about 2 years straight with 1 weekend off. And I just did open house after open house after open house. And for me, you know, what I found is that it didn't matter if I knew what I was doing or how good I was or how bad I was. It was the fact that I was doing it all the time. It was the consistency over and the consistency and the intensity of my efforts over really my knowledge or my experience or anything like that. The more I did it, the more confident I got, the better I got, and I built up momentum in a pipeline. And I'm a firm believer that whatever you choose for lead generation, that is just the truth. So that's where I started. I had an opportunity to become a leader within a Keller Williams system. I grew one of the top brokerages in our region. That was a lot of fun. I spent a lot of time learning about team building and business building. And that led me to grow a large expansion team within that company across the country. Eventually we were in 25 states. And then I actually grew a coaching company, a national coaching company that was built on a holistic approach, because a lot of my life, I made a lot of money, but I actually didn't have a great quality of life. So it really came from a personal place of wanting to help entrepreneurs realize that they can have both, because I didn't realize that for a lot of years. And it did detriment my life for a period of time. Good news is I was able to learn from that and go through a transformation and then pay it forward and help other entrepreneurs. On my 45th birthday, I realized that I should be doing something a little bit different. It was time for me to move out and do something on my own. All of my other opportunities had been in partnership with other people. And I just felt called to take my skills and experience and passion and go do something different for myself and for my family. And that's when I moved over to eXp Realty, which was about 22 months ago. Today, I have 200 partners across the country. I get to wake up every day helping people be better human beings, have a better life, and be a better realtor. And that's what truly makes me happy. So that's me in a nutshell. And today I'm going to talk about procrastination, because we all do it, including me. But also I started to become really interested in this concept because when I grew the coaching company, we were helping about 500 realtors across the country. And so I've been coaching the agents that partner with me and people in our coaching company for years on how you priority manage so that you can really use your calendar to equip you to do the things that need to be done. And it can help you to not procrastinate so much. The reality is, though, is that I don't know that that's always true, because at the end of the day, we can still have things on our priority list. We can still believe things that are priorities, and we can still put them on our calendar, and we can still not do them. So for a while, I was talking to people about, okay, so you know what to do, but you're not doing it. Why is that? Because we're talking about all of these tactics to get ourselves to do things, or we're talking about all these business strategies, and yet we're not getting ourselves to do the things that we know we should do. That is a whole fundamental different problem than knowing what to do and having to learn something. But recently, I came upon some studies and some articles that have been very interesting to me. And the first time I read it, I was like, oh my gosh, that's it. When it comes to procrastination, after hundreds of people that I've coached, this is what people need to be understanding, not about their time blocking, not about their priority management. This they need to understand about their brain so that they can actually get themselves into action. So I wanted to talk to you about it today. It's not going to take very long. And then I would love to hear your thoughts, questions, and we'll just have a little conversation around it. Okay. So first and foremost, if you've been told that you need to be better at time management, and that's why you procrastinate and it hasn't worked for you, great news, you are not alone and it's not really the problem. To me, that is exciting because now we're not feeling like a failure, and we don't feel like, why can't I why can't I figure this out? Why am I so bad at time blocking? Like, I have people tell me all the time, I am just bad at time blocking. I don't know if that's necessarily the problem, but either way, it's not going to be motivational for us to feel that we're bad at something and that we're never going to truly be able to get ourselves to do the things that we need to do if we can't figure out this skill. So the good news is you don't have to be good at time blocking to not be a procrastinator. The second good news is everybody's a procrastinator at some time in their life, so you're not alone. And even the top producers are procrastinating things that they could be doing, and they probably would be doing more if they wouldn't procrastinate, right? So we all do it. So here's what that particular study showed us, is that when we keep telling people that they need to plan better, that they need to time block better, what we're completely leaving out of the equation is the reality that there are two parts of our brain. There is the front part of our brain. And if you're a Keller Williams, person, you will know that there was we talked about this in bold a lot, the prefrontal cortex. This is the planning part of our brain. But there is a stronger part of our brain, which is called the limbic system. And this part of our brain is responsible for our immediate emotional responses. This part of our brain is substantially stronger than the prefrontal cortex. So if we understand that there is literally this tug of war happening inside of our brain all of the time, then we can understand our brain and figure out how to trick it or how to train it or how to use some hacks. So we procrastinate, you guys, not because we don't know how to time block. We procrastinate because we are controlling our mood and our emotions. Okay, so I'm going to stop for a minute because I read that and I was like, that's exactly what procrastination is. I don't want to do something that makes me nervous, upset, frustrated, feeling like a failure, rejected. It has nothing to do with that you don't know how to time block it or it's not a priority in your brain. It has to do with your brain telling you, no, Dave, don't go there. You're going to feel like crap. You want to feel happy. And it's going to override any planning that you did, and you are going to use it to regulate your mood and emotions. And it's a subconscious thing that happens. It's not an active choice or decision in the moment. So if we understand that we are regulating our moods, then it gives us some interesting information that we can do something with. So basically, the study was talking about, because we have these two parts of our brain and there's always this tug of war, there's a simple strategy that you can do, which is called the pleasure principle, they call it. And it's basically a way that we can kind of leverage our brain's reward system to create dopamine. Everybody's heard of the word dopamine. It's basically the pleasure chemical, right? This is what plays a huge role in this tug of war in our brain. The limbic system is going to release a dopamine and make us feel good. And so, we, by the way, we become addicted to the chemicals in our brain, whether we know it or not, whether they're good chemicals or bad. We're literally addicted to it. So procrastination becomes this crazy thing. And I'm going to tell you why it becomes a crazy thing, because what happens when you decide not to do something because you're controlling your mood and emotion, what do you do instead? 9 out of 10 times, you don't go make your calls. You do something that you like to do in your business. I talk to agents all the time. Yeah, I was going to make those calls, but you know what? I have that event next week and I had to make my Canva. No, you didn't have to make your Canva. You like to make your Canva. You don't like to make your phone calls. The phone calls make you upset and nervous. The Canva makes you happy, and it releases dopamine in your brain. So now what are we doing? We're now training our brain that when we procrastinate, we even feel better because we get to do something we love to do. So we're creating this like literal, vicious cycle, right? Okay. So with that being said, you can actually create a hack. And this pleasure principle says that if we know that our brain is going to release that pleasure chemical, then we can actually create situations that cause our brain to do this, that will actually reward us before we complete the task. So in other words, by the way, it was also saying that dopamine hacking is what they like to call it, is like creating little rewards for the journey towards the tasks. And so Dopamine is released in anticipation of a reward, not during the reward. It gets released when we are like, oh, we're going to get to go do that. It's released before we actually even go do the Canva, for an example. It's actually released when we make the decision, we're not going to cold call, we're going to go make the Canva. Before we even make the Canva, which is the thing we actually like to do, the dopamine is released. So the really cool thing is that we can get ourselves out of this kind of self-reinforcing cycle, because what we can do is we can create an anticipation of a reward after something that we don't want to do, right? So we have to reframe. There's two things that we have to do. We have to reframe the discomfort with a magic phrase, and we have to tell ourselves or put on our calendar that once we are done with our calls, we're going to get to do this. And those are the two strategies that I've been doing this with a couple of my coaching clients, just as kind of curious if it would work for them. And I'm having a tremendous amount of success, because what they weren't realizing is that were constantly diverting activities to regulate their mood and emotions and to release this dopamine. And they had such a strong habit of procrastination because they were basically addicted to this, that now they can actually do the same thing, but they only get to do the thing that they want after they do something that they don't want to do. And when they are doing that, they release the dopamine right before they do the task they don't want to do. So it actually increases their mood a little bit. Are they still a little bit uncomfortable? Yes, but it increases their mood. It releases the dopamine and it gets them through the task. And then they go do the thing immediately after that they were anticipating. And now they're training their brain that when they do things that they don't really like to do, they get to do something that they like to do after. And they're using the dopamine spike to actually get themselves into action. I mean, it truly works. I'm going to give you a weird example of this because it's kind of an embarrassing example, but it is true. And I'm a pretty transparent person. I read this article and I was like, oh my gosh, I did this when I sold real estate all the time. I loved doing open houses. As I told you, that is what I like to do. I became good at it. It was my entire strategy for growing my business. But I also did door knocking around the open houses because that's what made it even more successful. And it's also how I got listings. But I absolutely dreaded doing door knocking. I loved being in person, but there was something about knocking on doors that was extremely uncomfortable for me. But I knew I needed to do it if I was going to continue to grow my business. I would literally tell myself on Fridays, I would do the door knocking on Fridays for the open houses on the weekends, that I would get to go shopping. I'm not kidding you. I shopped. I was just thinking about this the other day. Oh my God, I shopped every Friday. It was really bad. I told myself I'm going shopping after I did these doors in this neighborhood, and I did. And I went shopping every single time. I probably also bought something, and I would not advocate for that because I spent a lot of my money in my first 12 years of real estate. But I mean, I was like, this is exactly what I did. I got myself into like this dopamine high to go do the things because I just knew I had to do it, but I got a reward and I enjoyed the reward, but I trained myself and it became actually a structured habit. And it was like a time blocking hack. It was in my calendar. You're door knocking and then you're going shopping, like I was anticipating it and I was excited for it. So it actually does work, and it works if you do it consistently. So what I'll tell you about procrastination and time blocking is, if you understand the way your brain works, what you should be doing is putting the tasks that you really don't like to do in smaller bursts and put something you enjoy doing right after it. And then when you're going to go into that activity, acknowledge to yourself, oh, I need to make these 10 calls, but then I'm going to get to do this. Because when you do that, you actually literally change the chemistry in your brain. They were watching people when they were doing this, and they were taking, scans of their brain, and they were actually seeing the dopamine released. There was also a second thing, and then I'll open it up for some conversation, that I thought was a little bit interesting, but it was based on scientific evidence and the scanning of the brain, is that they actually reframed this like task that they had to do in this uncomfortable feeling with this magic phrase, which I don't really understand how the magic phrase works, but there is something that apparently works with this, because it did prove every time to increase dopamine release in the brain. And what I will say is, I've learned through many, many years of being coached and coaching others that words do matter. We know this. We know that you can literally talk to plants and you can say negative words, and the negative energy will actually affect the plant before your very eyes. We know that your cells eavesdrop on your thoughts. We know that it changes the chemistry in our body when we say words that create anxiety, create fear. We know the words we say matter. And so this is a very simple sentence, but for whatever reason, it helps people overcome procrastination because it increases dopamine. And this phrase is, "This is the good work." Sounds super simple, but the phrase has power to fundamentally shift our perspective and our internal chemistry, which they have been able to prove because, number one, it acknowledges the reality of the situation. Work can be challenging, and that's okay. Like, that's just what it is. Not all tasks are going to be enjoyable, right? And discomfort is a sign that we're pushing our boundaries and growing. Now, look, we talk about all the time, you're not growing unless you're uncomfortable. And we all understand it fundamentally. But we have to first acknowledge, yeah, I don't like doing this task. But then number two, when we say this is the good work, it aligns the task with our goals and our values. And when we say it, we remind ourselves that this task, even if it's difficult or not pleasurable, is valuable and it's meaningful. And it's part of the work that you need to do to achieve your goals and to fulfill your responsibilities. And so there is something with that phrase, and they tried a number of different phrases, and this was a phrase that released some of the most dopamine. So if it triggers a dopamine release, and you do it consistency, the more you practice these two strategies, the more automatic it's going to become. You won't even necessarily have to realize you're saying, this is the good work. You won't have to realize, you're anticipating what you get to do after. It'll start to become more of a habit and a routine. And as we continue to understand our own overcoming of procrastination, I think the most important thing is to understand two things. Consistency is key, because if you are in a mode of procrastination, you do have consistency. You just have consistency of regulating your mood and not doing what you need to do. You can create consistency by using these hacks and getting yourself to also overcome that, do the thing, and use your brain. That is what is absolutely holding you back to benefit you versus you constantly fighting against something, which is why you typically don't do what you need to do. And also that, procrastination is literally just about making conscious choices. I always tell people that oftentimes we are living so subconsciously. Like, we'll say out loud to our coach, yeah, I procrastinate that. I don't do it and I don't know why. But in the actual moments, we don't make active choices. We oftentimes don't even make an active choice to procrastinate. We just do it. Like, it just happens because it's a subconscious pattern. We don't even think about it. We just don't want to do it. So we find something else to do that's going to make us feel better. And then we go through our whole week and we realize, I didn't do anything I was supposed to do all week. And it wasn't like every minute you were making an active choice to procrastinate. No, you weren't. You weren't making any active choices at all. And that's the problem. So when you can really empower yourself from getting outside of the subconscious, making active choices, but doing it knowing a little bit about how your brain works, so it can make it a lot easier on you instead of you fighting against something that's difficult to fight against, you're going to find that you will be more likely to actually get yourself into some of these forward progress habits. And the last thing I'll say about that is start small. Make 3 calls and then do something that you like. Go make your Canva. Make 3 more calls and do something that you like. For most people, we feel like we should be able to just go do 100 calls. And I mean, sure, it'd be great. And we're all overachievers and we think that that's the reality. But if we're making very little calls right now, the reality of us making 100 calls is pretty much like 0%. So we're setting ourselves up for failure, for frustration, for feeling like we're inadequate, which is a very, very demotivational mindset, but also it creates self-trust issues. Those are also subconscious issues that show up in our subconscious that we don't even realize. And all of a sudden the self-talk in our head is, I told you, Rob, you never do what you say you're going to do. You don't even know you're saying it to yourself, but you're actually saying it to yourself. If you have things on your calendar right now that you do not do, please delete them. Because if you look at something every day and you never do it, every time you look at it and don't do it, that's what your brain is telling you. And you are building levels of self-distrust that are going to be extremely demotivating. And it takes a while to build that trust back up. How you can build the trust back up though, or start trusting yourself to show up, is starting small and getting into consistency, because that's what makes you feel good. That's what builds your self-trust and self-esteem. And you can always do more. right? So when you're doing this and you're looking at your time blocking, do short bursts. In my humble opinion, if you aren't really in good habits yet, do short bursts, reward yourself with something, do short bursts, reward yourself with something. But don't just think because you reward yourself with something, it's going to work. Remember, you have to tell yourself, oh, I get to do this when I'm done with this, because your mind has to register that in order to have the dopamine release. And then try it. This is the good work. I mean, what do you got to lose? When you feel like you don't want to do something, say it out loud. Words matter, and then get yourself into some action. So, I mean, your brain is literally addicted to dopamine, and the way that you get that rush is by not doing those things. I mean, that's what I look at this and I go, well, this is great news, because there's nothing wrong with you. It's just your brain is such a strong muscle that it literally can control all of our lives. You know, I became passionate about learning about the brain because my son at age 9 was diagnosed with OCD and anxiety. And, you know, it's a debilitating disease. However, you can retrain your brain. There are actual therapies that literally you can the brain can be rewired by just you taking active choices and controlling it. But if you don't, that particular disease, you'll find yourself stuck in your room and you won't be able to leave your house because it will become so strong. So you have to constantly be pushing it and expanding. Otherwise, it's going to be creeping in on you. And I think procrastination, as I look into this, is the exact same thing. If you allow it and keep allowing it, it's going to be harder and harder and harder because now your habit of procrastination has really taken over. So the good news is you can slowly but surely start pushing forward. So for someone like you that has just become a strong habit, we'll pick just one thing that you're just like, I've been so frustrated with myself. I joke about it, but it still really bothers me. So what is that one thing? And just do something super small, but try a couple of these hacks, because as you start to just do it, like, wow, I did that for 3 days or 4 days in a row. And maybe it was one thing, one call or one, whatever, that is going to start to help you just become a little bit stronger in a forward progress habit versus the one that really has just been kind of taking over you. So, I mean, it's totally possible. I believe anybody can do anything with their brain if they want, because I've seen a debilitating disease where my son's been able to just literally be like, no, I am not doing that. This is what I'm doing. Did it take him 20 years almost? Yes, but it works. And so I'm just like, we can do this, but we have to understand it and stop beating ourselves up about it too. Because that's the bad part of this, is that I know a lot of people that are just coming to me feeling hopeless. Like, I guess I'm just a procrastinator. Maybe I shouldn't even be an entrepreneur. And it's like, no, that has nothing to do with that. You just have to know what's going on so you can make a better decision and start making some good moves. If you don't know, you're just going to be stuck in the same pattern, right?
For sure.
Yay. I always believe that there's a reason, like somebody's always going to show up in the conversation is going to be like, I needed that. And so that's why I told Rob, I don't care if there's 1 or 2 people, it's like, it's going to make a difference for somebody. So that's awesome. There's also 2 things of procrastination. One is you just don't get yourself to do the things that you know you have to do that would make a difference in your life. Okay. That's like cold calling. That's like lead generation. Like, people know this is going to make a difference in my life, my family's life, and I still can't get myself to do it. Right. That procrastination is a mood regulation, emotional trigger. I just am not going to do it. I'm going to do something else that I like to do, and I'm going to get addicted to that habit. But there's also a procrastination. And I think sometimes procrastination, if we really ask ourselves the right question, can come more from something that we just don't desire to do. And it isn't going to really move the needle forward in our life or our finances. We maybe told somebody we do it for them. It was maybe more of a favor. Maybe we're somebody that says yes to a lot of things. We get ourselves overwhelmed. We have lots of things we're supposed to be doing. And then we're going to start to get overwhelmed. And then we procrastinate everything because we feel like we have too many things and we can't get any of it done. And that's different. And that would be where I would be coaching you and advising you to, is that something that is labor intensive and not really a moneymaker? Is that what's driving your procrastination? In that case, do some other decisions have to be made, because you don't have to force yourself to do something that's not going to be advantageous to you either, right? So that's, and I might have heard that incorrectly, but I think that's just a good thing to distinguish regardless. Yeah, you can watch the recording. You guys can reach out to me. You can find me by my cell phone. You can find me on socials. If you happen to be in workplace, you can find me there. My name is on the screen. I'm always totally happy to just do a free, 15, 20-minute call. If somebody's just like, gosh, I need to work through something, give me 15, 20 minutes of what you think. And hopefully I'll be contributing a little bit more here in Rob's amazing program.
Well, there's no hopefully about that, Cari. We're making that happen.
Cheryl,
absolutely. And guys,
Cheryl's
Cari, you do one-on-one coaching as well, correct?
I do a little bit of it. Yeah. So for very specific people, certainly, because now that I have the organization that I have, I do a lot of my coaching just for my own people, and there's just limited time. However, I do have a small handful of people that just like find me for something very specific or get referred to me where I feel really called to help them. But I also have 4 or 5 coaches that have partnered with me, and they do one-on-one coaching. So oftentimes if I can't, they're a lot like me in a lot of ways, because, people attract like-minded people. So, yes, please reach out if there's something I can do.
Awesome. Good. For you guys that are on here, if you want to reach out to Cari, she is definitely accessible. She's in the Facebook groups, the Rockstar Agent group. And yeah, we'll have this video up very quickly. For those of you who missed it, watch it 3 times. Right. Cool. Cari Briner, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. I'm grateful for you. All right.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.